The December wind came straight off the prairie, cutting through my wool coat like it wasn't there. I shifted the waxed paper bag to my left hand, Patricia's favorite kolaches from the Czech bakery, still warm, and reached for the steel door handle of Sterling Agricultural Solutions. Cold bit my palm. Diesel exhaust hung heavy from the idling semis at the loading dock. A young guard I didn't know stepped out. "Tyler," his badge said. "I'm here for the Christmas party," I told him. "Wade Sterling." He looked uncomfortable, pointed at a new sign beside the door, "Sterling Agricultural Solutions. Family members not permitted on premises." "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling." His voice dropped. "Mrs. Sterling's orders. I really am sorry." Through the glass, I could see the party. My wife Patricia moving through the crowd. Not one person looked toward the door. "What transition?" I asked, catching his earlier slip. Tyler just shook his head, took the kolaches. I stood there with my empty hands. The bag of kolaches sat on Tyler's security desk behind the glass. Through the window, I watched Patricia laugh at something Frank Morrison said. Frank worked in accounts payable. I'd hired him 6 years ago. The wind picked up, whistling through the gap between the loading dock and the main building. Cattle from the Brenner place next door were lowing. That low sound they make before a storm. My fingers were already going numb. Tyler shifted his weight. Young kid, maybe 24. "Mr. Sterling, sir, before you go, you might want to..." He glanced back at the lobby. "Check the memorial wall." Through the window there, I didn't understand. But I walked along the building's edge until I could see the brass plaque we'd installed in 2015. The one that told the company history, founded 1983 by Wade Sterling and Patricia Morrison Sterling, built on the innovations of Wade Sterling Sr., whose pioneering seed drill modifications revolutionized prairie agriculture. That's what it used to say. I'd written the inscription myself. The plaque was different now. Newer brass, shinier. The letters crisp like they'd just been engraved. Founded 1983 by Patricia Sterling, built through vision, innovation, and agricultural excellence. My father's name was gone. My name was gone. Just Patricia Sterling, like she'd done it all alone in an empty barn, with nothing but vision and a business degree from Northwestern. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. My breath fogged it up. Inside, someone had hung garland around the plaque. Christmas lights blinked red and green across the brass. Wade Sterling, Sr., my father, the man who'd spent 40 years in a workshop developing hydraulic modifications that let combines handle uneven terrain. The man who'd given 3 dozen farmers free repairs during the 80s farm crisis because a neighbor doesn't charge interest on decency. The man who'd signed over half the company to me on my 30th birthday and said, "Now it's yours to build on." Gone. The wind shifted. I smelled creosote from the railroad ties stacked by the shipping area, heard the pneumatic hiss of the loading dock door opening. 2 workers came out smoking, saw me at the window, and went back inside fast. I walked back to Tyler's station, tapped on the glass. He cracked the door. "Sir?" "How long has that sign been up? The family member's policy." 3 weeks, sir." "Since right after Thanksgiving." 3 weeks. Patricia and I had eaten Thanksgiving dinner together. Turkey, her mother's stuffing recipe. Pumpkin pie I'd picked up from the bakery. We'd watched football. She'd fallen asleep on the couch with her head on my shoulder during the 3rd quarter. She hadn't mentioned a new policy. "What about the memorial plaque?" My voice sounded steady. I was surprised by that. "When did that get changed?" Tyler looked miserable. "I don't know, sir. I only started this job 2 weeks ago. It was already like that." "Who ordered it?" "I can't..." He glanced over his shoulder. "Sir, I could lose my job." I nodded. Understood. The kid needed work. We all need work. "The transition, what?" I said. "You mentioned a transition before. What is that?" His face went careful, blank, like someone had trained him what not to say. "I'm not supposed to discuss company business with non-employees, sir." Non-employees. I'd built the foundation of this building myself, literally, summer of 1986 before we had money to hire contractors. My father and I had poured the concrete footings, set the rebar, laid the floor. My hands had blistered so bad I couldn't hold a wrench for a week after. Non-employee. "Understood," I said. I walked back to my truck. A 2014 Ford F-150, nothing fancy. The steering wheel was cold enough to burn. The vinyl seat cracked and hard. I sat there with the engine off, watching my breath fog up the windshield. Through the building's front windows, I could see the party going on. Someone had set up a buffet table. Patricia was talking to a man I didn't recognize. Tall, maybe 50, expensive suit. He had his hand on the small of her back. Just briefly, then it was gone. The Christmas lights blinked on and off, red, green, red, green. My father's name, erased. My name, erased. Family members not permitted. Tyler's words came back to me. "I'm not supposed to discuss company business with non-employees." I turned the key. The engine coughed to life. The heater blew cold air that would take miles to warm up. 41 years I'd been married to Patricia. Met her when we were both 23. Me with an associate's degree in agricultural mechanics from the community college. Her with that Northwestern MBA and plans that stretched 5 years out, then 10, then 20. I was the steady one. The one who understood how a hydraulic pump actually worked, who could diagnose a failing bearing by sound alone, who kept the equipment running while she handled the business side. That's what I'd thought, anyway. I pulled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, the building sat there with its steel siding and glass windows, built on what used to be Sterling family farmland, built on my father's innovations, built on 40 years of my labor. The sign at the entrance caught the afternoon light. Family members? Not permitted. That's when I knew. This wasn't insurance policy. This wasn't corporate legal protection. This was something else. I didn't go home. Couldn't face the empty house yet. The one where Patricia's coffee mug would still be sitting by the sink from this morning. The one where her reading glasses would be on the nightstand like nothing had changed. Instead, I drove to Main Street. Pulled into Lou's Diner at 7:30, same as I had every Friday night for 15 years. Meatloaf special, black coffee, piece of apple pie if they had it. The bell over the door chimed. The warm air hit me, fryer oil and coffee, and that particular smell of a place that's been feeding people since 1952. The vinyl booths were about half full. Usual Friday crowd. The conversation stopped. Not all at once, but like a wave. Table by table, people looked up and then looked away. Lou was behind the counter, wiping it down with a damp rag. He didn't meet my eyes. I slid onto my usual stool. The vinyl was cracked, patched with duct tape. I'd been sitting on this same crack for a decade and a half. Coffee, Lou. He poured it. Set the mug down harder than necessary. Coffee sloshed over the rim onto the counter. Sorry, he muttered. No problem. I wrapped my hands around the mug. The warmth felt good after standing in that parking lot. Behind me, I heard whispers. Couldn't make out the words, but I heard my name. Heard Patricia's name. Lou wiped the spilled coffee. Didn't ask if I wanted to see a menu. Lou, something wrong? He looked at me then, not unkind, but not friendly either. Careful. Wade, I heard you had some trouble at Sterling Ag yesterday. Yesterday. It had only been yesterday. Felt like a week ago. Who'd you hear that from? Trish called the Chamber of Commerce this morning. Emergency meeting, she said you've been... He paused. She said you've been confused lately. Memory issues. That you tried to force your way into the building during a private company event. Force my way in. I'd knocked on the door with a bag of kolaches. That's not what happened. I'm just telling you what she said. Lou set down his rag. She said, it's been going on for a while. That you've forgotten conversations, gotten dates mixed up. She's worried about you. The coffee was bitter on my tongue. I'm 67, Lou. I'm not senile. I didn't say you were. But his tone said he wasn't sure. She sounded real concerned, Wade. Real concerned. I set down the mug, stood up, left $3 on the counter even though I hadn't eaten. Wade, thanks for the coffee. I walked out. The bell chimed again. Behind me, the conversation started back up. The next stop wasn't planned. I was just driving, and somehow I ended up at First Nebraska Bank. Rita Kowalski had been our business banker for 12 years, handled the company accounts, helped us refinance the building in 2019. She was at her desk when I walked in, looked up, and something crossed her face. Not quite guilt. Close to it. Wade, I didn't expect to see you today. Just in the area. Thought I'd stop in. Dumb. The heating system hummed. The carpet smelled like that commercial cleaning solution they use in offices. Rita's desk had a photo of her grandkids. Christmas cards she'd received were displayed on a corkboard behind her. She glanced toward the bank manager's office. He was on the phone, hadn't noticed me yet. Wade, I'm not supposed to. She lowered her voice, pulled up something on her computer, turned the screen slightly toward me. I could get in a lot of trouble for this. It was a loan application. Sterling Agricultural Solutions. $2 million, approved 3 months ago. Signed by Patricia Sterling, CEO, sole signatory, no mention of Wade Sterling anywhere on the document. She borrowed $2 million? My voice came out hoarse. Against the company. Business expansion loan. Rita clicked the screen off fast. Wade, do you have a power of attorney situation? Because the paperwork shows she has full authority to... My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Sterling? A man's voice. Professional. Cold. This is Donald Sims. I'm corporate counsel for Sterling Agricultural Solutions. I stepped away from Rita's desk, walked toward the bank's front window. Outside, traffic moved past on Main Street. Normal Friday afternoon. People going about their lives. What can I do for you, Mr. Sims? I'm calling to inform you that the company has documented several instances of your attempting to gain unauthorized access to the premises. We have security footage from yesterday showing you attempting to enter during a private corporate event. We have additional footage from previous occasions. I'd visited my wife at work maybe once a month, brought her lunch, stopped in to say hello. Unauthorized access, I repeated, at my own company. Mr. Sterling, according to our corporate records, you are not listed as an employee, officer, or board member of Sterling Agricultural Solutions, LLC. Mrs. Sterling has expressed concerns about your recent behavior. If you continue to trespass on company property or attempt to interfere with business operations, we will be forced to seek a restraining order. The heating vent above me rattled. I smelled the coffee on my own breath, tasted something metallic. I built that company. That's not what our incorporation documents show, sir. I'd advise you to consult your own legal counsel. And Mr. Sterling, do not contact Mrs. Sterling directly about this matter. All communication should go through this office. Are we clear? The line went dead. I stood there holding my phone. Through the window, I watched a young mother push a stroller past, watched an old man shuffle toward the pharmacy, watched the world keep turning while mine stopped cold. Rita appeared at my elbow. Wade, are you okay? I looked at her concerned face. At the computer screen that showed my wife had borrowed $2 million without telling me, at the bank where I'd done business for 40 years. She's been planning this, I said. Hasn't she? Rita didn't answer, but she didn't have to. The answer was in her silence. I drove home, sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The house smelled like Patricia's perfume. She'd left for work at 7 this morning, kissed my forehead, said she'd be home late, board meeting. I told her to drive safe. That was 10 hours ago. Before I knew about the sign, before I knew about the memorial plaque, before I knew about the $2 million and the lawyer and the restraining order threat, I couldn't stay in there. Couldn't look at the wedding photos on the wall. The comfortable lie of 41 years spread out across every room. I went to the workshop instead. The barn was 12 miles outside Lincoln, original Sterling homestead from 1952. My grandfather had built it for equipment storage and repair. My father had added the hydraulic lift system in 1907. I'd installed the air compressor and modern electrical in 1998. The building smelled like it always did, motor oil and old leather and the particular scent of metal that's been worked for 70 years. Cold, though. The wood stove was dead. Wind whistled through gaps in the siding that I kept meaning to patch. I turned on the overhead lights. Fluorescent bulbs flickered, then caught. The walls were lined with tools on pegboards, each one outlined in chalk so you knew exactly where it belonged. My father's system. A place for everything, he used to say. When you're working in the dark or the cold, you don't want to waste time hunting. And the 1974 John Deere combine sat in the center bay. I'd been meaning to winterize it before the real cold set in. Check the hydraulics, drain the fluids, grease the bearings. Maintenance, you couldn't skip if you wanted equipment to last. I pulled on my work gloves. Thick canvas, stains dark from years of use. The fabric was stiff from the cold. The hydraulic pressure gauge was on the workbench. I carried it over to the combine, connected the fittings. The metallic click of the coupling sounded loud in the quiet barn. While the gauge stabilized, I grabbed the maintenance logbook from the shelf. Every piece of equipment in this barn had a logbook. Date, work performed, parts replaced, pressure readings, 50 years of records for some of the older machines. The logbook for the John Deere went back to 1907. My father's handwriting for the first 15 years, then mine after he died in 1989. Neat columns. Precise measurements. Nothing fancy, just the truth of what the machine needed and when. I flipped to where I'd last worked on it. June 2024. Replaced the hydraulic hoses, tested the pressure, lubricated the bearing assemblies. Something fell out from between the pages. A piece of paper, folded in half, not my handwriting. I picked it up, unfolded it. It was a memo. Corporate letterhead, Sterling Agricultural Solutions. To Patricia Sterling, CEO. From Marcus Vanguard, Vanguard Consulting Group. Date, January 15th, 2019. Subject, Phase 3, Patent Reassignment Timeline. Per our discussion, I've prepared the documentation for Phase 3 of the ownership restructuring. All patents currently held jointly by Wade Sterling and Sterling Agricultural Solutions, LLC, will be reassigned to sole corporate ownership. Timeline, Jan 21. File amended patent assignments with USPTO. Jan 28. Update all corporate materials to reflect change. Jan 31. Remove W. Sterling from public-facing acknowledgments. As discussed, the hospital signing window provided the necessary authorization. Documentation is legally sound. Recommend minimal communication about the change to avoid unnecessary questions. Invoice for consulting services attached. Regards, Marcus Vanguard. The paper shook in my hands. Not from the cold, from something else. January 2019, 5 years ago. I flipped the memo over. There was a business card stapled to the back. Marcus Vanguard, Vanguard Consulting Group, AgriCorp Industries Division. We grow brands, not just crops. The barn door scraped open. I spun around, heart hammering. Hank Brenner stood in the doorway, 2 thermoses in his hands, 71 years old, retired from farming but still working part-time at the county clerk's office. My father's best friend. The man who'd taught me how to read a land survey when I was 16. Saw your truck, he said. Figured you could use some coffee. He kicked the door shut behind him, set 1 thermos on the workbench. The smell of it cut through the motor oil and metal, strong, black, the way Hank had been making it since before I was born. You heard, I said. Whole town's heard by now. He poured coffee into the thermos cup, handed it to me. Lou called me after you left the diner. Said you looked like you'd been gut shot. The coffee burned my throat. Felt good, real. She's erasing me, Hank, from the company, from the patents, from everything my father built. Hank looked at the memo in my other hand. Didn't ask if he could see it. Just waited. I handed it to him. He read it slowly, his jaw tightened. When he finished, he folded it back up carefully, set it on the workbench. How long have you known? I asked. About the filing irregularities. He was quiet for a long moment, sipped his coffee. Outside, the wind picked up, the barn creaked. Couple years, he admitted. Maybe 3. Started noticing things didn't match up. Corporate filings that referenced documents I couldn't find. Amendments to agreements that weren't in the original files. Trish came in a lot, always in a hurry, always had some explanation. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to interfere in your marriage, Wade. Figured maybe there was some business reason. Figured it wasn't my place. He looked at me then, and his eyes were tired. I was wrong. I should have said something. The hydraulic gauge hissed softly. The pressure had stabilized. Everything was functioning within normal parameters. The machine was honest. Metal didn't lie. I wish people worked the same way. Hank reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded photocopy, set it on the workbench next to the memo. This is from 1983, he said. Original partnership agreement when you and Trish incorporated Sterling Agricultural Solutions. I pulled it from the basement archives this afternoon, before I came here. I unfolded it, skimmed the text. There it was, clear as day. Partnership shall be split 50-50 between Wade Sterling and Patricia Morrison. Sterling, perpetuity. Any amendments to this agreement require consent of both parties and must be filed with Lancaster County within 30 days. In perpetuity, both parties, county filing required. Now look at what Trish filed in 2019. Hank pulled out another photocopy. Right after that January date on the memo. The 2019 version was different. Sole proprietorship, Patricia Sterling, 100% ownership. No mention of Wade Sterling anywhere except as former equipment consultant. No ownership stake. She filed this without my consent, I said, and without filing it with the county like the original agreement requires. She filed it directly with the state, bypassed us entirely. Hank tapped the papers. Wade, I think you need to see the full basement archives. There's more, a lot more. The wind rattled the barn door. The gauge hissed again. The coffee had gone lukewarm in my hand, but I didn't care. For the first time since yesterday, something in my chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough to breathe. When can we go? I asked. Hank checked his watch. Courthouse closes in an hour, but I've got keys. We can go tonight if you want. Just you, me, and 70 years of filing cabinets. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Fair warning, though. Once you see what's in those files, you can't unsee it. I looked at the memo, at the business card, at the photocopies of agreements that told 2 different stories. I already can't unsee it, I said. We finished our coffee in silence. The barn settled around us. Above our heads, in the rafters, I heard a barn owl calling, hunting. The sound echoed in the cold December air. Some things you can't undo. Some doors, once opened, won't close again. But at least I wouldn't be opening this one alone. Patricia came home at 10:30 that night. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the memo, the business card, and Hank's photocopies spread out in front of me. She stopped in the doorway, set down her briefcase. Her coat still had snowflakes melting on the shoulders. It had started coming down around 9. You went through my files, she said. Not a question, not an apology, just a statement of fact. I found this in the John Deere logbook. I held up the memo. Marcus Vanguard, Phase 3, Patent Reassignment Timeline. She took off her coat, hung it on the hook by the door like she always did, walked to the refrigerator, poured herself a glass of water. The ice maker clunked and hummed. We need to talk about your memory issues, Wade. My memory is fine. Is it? She turned to face me. Her expression was calm, too calm. You tried to force your way into a company event yesterday. You've been calling employees, asking strange questions. Rita said you came into the bank, confused about accounts you have no authorization to access. I built that company? You were the equipment mechanic. I was the business architect. She sat down across from me. The kitchen light was harsh overhead, fluorescent and cold. Wade, I know this is hard to hear, but you've been showing signs of cognitive decline for over a year now. Forgetting conversations, mixing up dates. I've been documenting it because I care about you. The heating vent rattled. Outside, wind drove snow against the window. The sound was like sand on glass. January 2019, I said. You reassigned the patents, removed my name from everything, filed new incorporation documents. With your full knowledge and consent. I don't remember consenting. That's exactly what I'm talking about. She reached across the table, touched my hand. Her fingers were cold from the water glass. Wade, you signed everything. You sat right here at this table with the lawyer. You said you wanted to simplify the ownership structure. You said you trusted me to handle the business side. I pulled my hand back, stared at the memo. I don't remember that. I know you don't. That's what scares me. Her voice was soft now, almost gentle. I've been talking to specialists. Early onset dementia can present exactly like this. Memory gaps. Confusion about business matters you used to understand. Paranoia. I'm not paranoid. You think I'm erasing you from the company. You think I'm stealing patents. Wade, honey, you signed every document willingly. You just don't remember because you're sick. The doubt crept in then, cold and insidious. I was 67. My father had started showing signs of confusion at 72. What if she was right? What if I had signed those documents and just couldn't remember? Show me, I said. Show me where I signed. She stood up, went to her study, came back with a folder, set it on the table and opened it. There were the documents. Corporate restructuring agreement. Patent reassignments, all dated January and February 2019. And there, at the bottom of each one, was my signature, my handwriting, my name, Wade Sterling. I stared at it. The signature looked right. The loops and slants exactly how I'd always written it. Do you remember now? Patricia asked. I didn't. The signatures were there, but the memory wasn't. 5 years ago, felt like a blank space. You were always the mechanic, Wade. Her voice had gone flat now. Professional. I was the business mind. And the truth is, the market doesn't care about your father's wrench collection. AgriCorp doesn't buy sentiment. They buy revenue models and intellectual property with clean ownership. AgriCorp? I've been in talks with them for 18 months. They want to acquire Sterling Agricultural, but they need clear ownership documentation, no messy partnership agreements, no complications. And she closed the folder. You're not in that model, Wade. You haven't been for years. The kitchen suddenly felt very cold. The heating vent had stopped rattling. Everything was quiet except for the wind and the snow. Get out, I said. This is my house, too. Get out. She stood up, took the folder, looked at me with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so cold. I've already talked to my attorney. If you continue this behavior, harassing employees, trespassing on company property, spreading lies about my business practices, we'll seek a restraining order, and Wade, we'll request a competency evaluation for your own protection. She went upstairs. I heard her moving around in the bedroom, heard a suitcase zipper. 10 minutes later, she came back down with an overnight bag. I'll stay at the Marriott tonight. Give you time to calm down. She paused at the door. I do love you. I hope you know that. I'm trying to help you. Then she was gone. The door closed. Her car started in the driveway. The sound of tires on snow fading away. I sat at the table staring at the documents, at my signature. 5 years ago, February 2019, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Dad? I hadn't heard that voice in 3 years. Not since the argument at Thanksgiving 2021. Not since I'd told Maya that if she couldn't accept Patricia as family, she wasn't welcome at our table. Maya. I heard. Her voice was tight, angry. I heard what's happening. Lou's daughter works at the bank. Word gets around. It's complicated. Is it true you were at the hospital in February 2019? The question caught me off guard. What? February 2019. Were you in the hospital? I tried to remember. February, 5 years ago. The same month as those signatures. Then it came back. Fragments. Blurry but there. Pneumonia. Bad pneumonia. I'd collapsed at the workshop. Hank had found me. The ICU. Oxygen mask. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think through the fever. Yes, I said slowly. I was in the ICU. Pneumonia. They had to sedate me because my oxygen levels kept dropping. Silence on the line. Dad? Maya's voice shook. Tell me you weren't in the hospital when you signed those papers. I looked at the dates again. The restructuring agreement, February 14th, 2019. The patent reassignments, February 16th, 2019, Valentine's Day, 2 days after. I'd been in the ICU both those days. My hands started shaking. The phone nearly slipped from my grip. I don't remember signing anything. I remember Patricia visiting, bringing papers. She said they were insurance forms for the hospital. I signed them because I couldn't breathe, and I trusted her. Jesus Christ, Maya was crying now. Dad, that's not consent. That's coercion. You were medically incapacitated. The kitchen floor felt like it was tilting. I gripped the table edge. She brought me papers while I was drowning in my own lungs, I said. And I signed them because she's my wife, and I was too sick to read them, and I trusted her. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, everything I'd believed for 41 years was crumbling into powder. I'm coming home, Maya said. I'm in Omaha. I can be there in an hour. Maya, it's late. The roads... I'm an agricultural lawyer, Dad, and someone needs to be. Her voice hardened. Someone needs to look at what she's done. All of it. The line went dead. I sat alone in the kitchen with documents that had my signature, but not my consent. With a marriage that was apparently a lie. With a daughter I'd pushed away, who was now the only person willing to help. The heating vent started rattling again. The sound echoed in the empty house. The call came at 7 in the morning. Donald Sims, Patricia's corporate lawyer. Mr. Sterling, I'm authorized to offer you a settlement. $500,000. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and relinquish any claims to Sterling Agricultural Solutions or its intellectual property. I was standing in the workshop. The wood stove was finally warm, crackling with split oak. Outside, everything was white from last night's snow, 6 inches at least. No, I said. Mr. Sterling, I'd advise you to think carefully. Your wife is prepared to pursue a competency evaluation. That process can be invasive, expensive, public. The stove popped. A log shifted, sending sparks up against the grate. You can't buy legacy, Mr. Sims. $500,000 is generous, given your lack of documentation supporting ownership claims. I have documentation. I just found more of it last night. A pause. What documentation? The kind with county filing stamps. The kind that shows your client committed fraud. Mr. Sterling, I'd be very careful about making accusations you can't prove. Defamation carries serious consequences. I hung up. Jake Townsend showed up an hour later. 19 years old, Earl's grandson. His grandfather had been my mentor, the man who taught me how a hydraulic system actually thinks, how to read metal fatigue before it became failure. Earl had died in January, heart attack, while watching the news. Quick, clean, the way he'd have wanted. Jake stood in the workshop doorway, snow on his shoulders, holding a cardboard box. Mr. Sterling, sorry to bother you so early. No bother, come in out of the cold. He stomped snow off his boots, set the box on the workbench. The cardboard was old, soft at the edges. Written on the side, in Earl's handwriting, tools, Jake. Grandpa's will said I'm supposed to give you these. Said you'd know what to do with them. Inside the box was Earl's tool set, the one from 1952 when he'd first started working. Old box wrenches with the chrome worn off, a bearing puller with tape on the handle, calipers that had measured 10,000 repairs. And, at the bottom, wrapped in an oil-stained rag, a micrometer. I lifted it out. Brass, heavy, precise. The kind of tool that lasted generations if you took care of it. Engraved on the frame, E.T. 1952, measure twice, cut once. Truth is in the thousandths. My throat tightened. He said you taught him that, Jake said quietly. About truth being in the measurements. About precision mattering. Other way around. Your grandfather taught me. Jake shoved his hands in his pockets, looked around the workshop. He also said if you ever needed help with something important, I should show up. Said you'd probably need a witness. He met my eyes. So, do you? I thought about sending him away. Thought about protecting him from whatever was coming. But Earl had raised him right, and the kid deserved to learn what his grandfather had known, that some fights you don't walk away from. You know anything about hydraulic pressure testing? Some. Grandpa showed me the basics. Good. We're going to winterize the John Deere, and while we do, I'm going to teach you how to spot when someone's been lying in the maintenance records. When we worked for 2 hours, checked the hydraulic lines, tested pressure points, greased the bearing assemblies. The work was methodical, rhythmic, the kind of thing that let your mind work while your hands stayed busy. I showed Jake how to read the logbook entries, how my father's handwriting was different from mine, how certain measurements told you when work had really been done versus when someone had just filled in dates to make it look current. Why does this matter? Jake asked, wiping grease from a fitting. Because precision matters, because when you measure something, you're creating a record of truth. And truth is what holds up when everything else falls apart. The compressor kicked on. The sound filled the barn. Steady, mechanical, honest. Jake held up the micrometer. Grandpa used this for everything. Said the day you stop measuring is the day you start guessing. Your grandfather was a smart man. He said you were the smartest man he knew. Said you could diagnose a problem just by listening to the engine. The workshop door opened. Maya stood there, snow in her hair, carrying 2 file boxes and a laptop bag. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. Not since the argument. Not since I'd chosen Patricia's version of family over my own daughter. She looked older now, 38. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her mother's eyes. My first wife, who'd died of cancer when Maya was 16. Dad? You drove through the snow. You're being erased from your own company. I drove through worse than snow. She set the boxes on the workbench, saw Jake. Hi, I'm Maya. Jake Townsend, Earl's grandson. Earl was a good man. I'm sorry for your loss. She looked at me. We need to talk. I spent all night going through county records with Hank Brenner. Dad, this is bigger than I thought. She opened the first file box, pulled out a stack of photocopies. The original 1983 partnership agreement grants you 50% ownership in perpetuity. Any amendments require consent of both parties and must be filed with Lancaster County within 30 days. And she set it down. Patricia's 2019 restructuring, she filed it directly with the state. Bypassed the county requirement entirely. That makes it invalid. But I signed it. You signed it while you were in the ICU with pneumonia. I pulled your medical records this morning. I'm listed as your emergency contact. They released them to me. February 14th, 2019. Oxygen saturation at 82%, sedated with midazolam. Dad, you couldn't legally consent to anything that day. Jake was listening, eyes wide. Maya pulled out more documents. And there's more. Hank found Marcus Vanguard's consulting contracts. He's not just advising Patricia. He's a vice president at AgriCorp Industries. Has been for 7 years. He's been positioning her for a buyout since 2018, while on AgriCorp's payroll. That's a conflict of interest so massive it could kill the whole deal. How long do we have? I asked. AgriCorp's purchase agreement closes April 15th, tax day. She looked at me. We have exactly 96 days to prove Patricia committed fraud. And Dad, she's going to fight dirty. It's outside. The wind picked up. Snow blew against the workshop windows. But inside, with my daughter and Earl's grandson and a pile of documents that told the truth, the cold didn't feel so bitter anymore. Jake held up the micrometer. Sterling, what did your grandpa mean about truth being in the thousandths? I took the tool from him, felt its weight, its precision. He meant that when you measure something correctly, you can't lie about what you find. Metal doesn't care about your feelings. Math doesn't care about your story. The truth is in the measurements. Maya smiled. First real smile I'd seen from her in 3 years. Then let's start measuring, she said. The reputation attack started small, then spread like ice cracking across a pond. First it was Lou's Diner. I walked in on a Tuesday morning, early March, the kind of day where the snow had started melting, but the air still cut through your coat. The smell of bacon and coffee should have been welcoming. Instead, conversation stopped the moment the door chimed. Lou was wiping down the counter, didn't look up. Coffee, Lou. He set down his rag, finally met my eyes. Wade, I can't serve you. And the diner had gone completely silent. 14 people watching. Can't or won't. I got 40 employees counting on Sterling Ag contracts. Trish provides the liability insurance for half the farm equipment in this county. I can't afford to pick sides. His voice was quiet, apologetic, but firm. I'm sorry. I stood there for a moment, smelled the coffee I wasn't going to get, heard the heating system rattle, felt 14 sets of eyes on my back. Understood, I said. I walked out. The bell chimed again. Behind me, the conversation started back up, louder this time, my name in every other sentence. The hardware store was next. Jim Patterson had been selling me bolts and bearing grease for 30 years. But when I walked in that afternoon, he glanced toward his office. Through the window, I could see someone on his computer, checking something, recording something. Jim rang up my purchase without speaking. When I handed him cash, he gave me back an extra $5. Register's acting up, he said. Loud enough for his employee to hear, then quieter. Discount. Don't tell anyone. It was a small thing, $5 on $35 worth of supplies. But it meant something. Outside, the parking lot was mostly mud. The snow had melted over the weekend, leaving everything wet and brown. My boots squelched with each step. I could smell the earth underneath. Cold, thawing, not quite ready for spring. I sat in my truck and called Maya. How bad is it? She asked. Lou won't serve me. Chamber of Commerce is backing Patricia. Half the town thinks I'm crazy, and the other half is too scared to say otherwise. That's what I figured. Dad, I need you to come to the courthouse. Hank and I found something. The Lancaster County Courthouse smelled like old paper and lemon furniture polish. The basement where they kept the archives smelled worse. Mold and dust and decades of forgotten documents. Hank had 3 filing cabinets open. Maya was at a folding table with her laptop and a stack of papers that had to be 4 inches thick. I got your medical records, Maya said. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. February 14th, 2019. You were admitted to ICU at 6 a.m. with severe pneumonia, oxygen saturation at 79%. They had you on high-flow oxygen and sedation. She turned the laptop toward me. Hospital chart notes. Doctor's handwriting barely legible, but the key phrases were clear. Altered mental status. Confusion secondary to hypoxia. Midazolam 2 mg IV for agitation. You were sedated because you kept trying to pull off the oxygen mask. You were confused, combative. Dad, you couldn't consent to anything that day. You couldn't consent the next day either. She clicked to another page. February 16th, same story. You weren't medically cleared for discharge until February 19th. But the documents are signed February 14th and 16th. Exactly. Patricia brought them to the hospital. Had you signed them when you were medically incapacitated? Maya's voice was hard. That's not consent. That's coercion. And it invalidates every document you signed during that admission. Hank cleared his throat. He was holding a different file. There's more. I've been tracking Marcus Vanguard's filing requests with the state. He's been asking for complete ownership documentation since September, made 4 separate requests. The state kept telling him to contact the county because of the original 1983 filing requirement. What does that mean? I asked. It means AgriCorp's due diligence team knows something's wrong with the ownership paperwork. They're looking for clean documentation and Patricia can't provide it. Hank set down the file. Wade, I made some calls this morning, called my cousin who works in the state commerce office. AgriCorp has filed 3 extension requests on the acquisition. They're stalling. Maya leaned forward. If they're stalling, they're looking for an exit. Corporate buyers don't stall unless they smell liability. Outside, I heard rain starting. Not snow anymore. March, rain, cold and steady, drumming on the courthouse roof, the sound of winter finally breaking. So what do we do? I asked. Maya pulled out another document. We file an emergency injunction. Stop the sale until the ownership question is resolved in court. We request a hearing with Judge Hastings. Hank says he's fair, old school, doesn't like corporate games. And this when? I'm filing tomorrow. We should get a hearing date within 2 weeks. She looked at me. Dad, once we do this, there's no going back. Patricia will come at us with everything. The competency evaluation, character assassination. She'll make you look like a confused old man who can't accept that his wife is more successful than he is. The rain picked up. Water dripped somewhere in the basement. The archives smelled like old promises and older betrayals. Let her try, I said. Hank smiled. First real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Your father would be proud. He hated bullies. So do I said. Maya started packing up the documents. We've got 92 days until the sale closes. April 15th, tax day. It's also the last day to file spring planting permits. She looked at me. I checked. Your name was removed from the Sterling family land permit. Patricia filed it under the corporate LLC only. The planting permit, the one thing that said you belonged to the land. The one thing that let you put seeds in the ground and claim what grew. She'd taken that too. Then we get it back, I said. All of it. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, surrounded by 70 years of filed promises and broken ones, we started building a case that would either restore my name or bury it forever. Hank pulled out his phone, made a call. Bernard? It's Hank Brenner. I need to talk to you about a case, an old friend of mine. Yeah, Wade Sterling. You remember his father? A pause. I thought you might. Listen, I think you're going to want to hear this one before it hits your docket. The rain drummed on. The archives waited. And somewhere in Lincoln, Patricia was building her case against me while her corporate buyers quietly looked for the exit door. Late March. The workshop was dark, except for the glow from the wood stove. I sat on the floor with my back against the workbench, a bottle of whiskey beside me. Not drunk, just tired. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The settlement offer was still on the table. Sims had called twice more, each time raising it. $600,000 now? $700 if I signed by Friday. Enough money to disappear. Buy a small place somewhere. Leave Lincoln. Leave the memories. Leave the fight. My phone sat on the concrete floor beside me. One call. That's all it would take. The stove popped. Orange light flickered across the walls, across the tool shadows, across the pegboard, outlines that my father had chalked 50 years ago. On the workbench above me sat a photograph in a simple frame. My father, 1967, holding the first patent, the original seed drill modification that had made Sterling agricultural possible. He was 42 in that photo, younger than I was now, smiling with grease on his hands and pride in his eyes. The patent document in the photo was handwritten. All of them were back then. Careful block letters. Technical drawings done with drafting pencils and straight edges. His name at the bottom, Wade Sterling, Sr. An inventor. I picked up the phone, stared at Sim's number, $700,000. A quiet exit. No more town gossip. No more looks in the hardware store. No more fighting with the woman I'd been married to for 41 years. My thumb hovered over the call button. Son, your name on that patent means something. My father's voice. Not real, just memory, but clear enough. It means you solved a problem that helped people. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. I'd been maybe 20 when he'd said that. We'd been working on a hydraulic modification for the Johnson's combine. Mr. Johnson couldn't afford to replace the whole system, so we'd engineered a workaround. Took us 3 weekends. My father had insisted on filing a patent, even though we'd given the Johnsons the modification for free, but we're not charging them, I'd said. Doesn't matter. The invention matters. The record matters. Someday, someone else will need the same solution. They'll find our patent. They'll see our names. They'll know we thought of something useful and shared it. He'd looked at me then, serious. Your name on that document means you left something behind. Something that helps. Don't forget that. I set down the phone, looked up at the photograph, at my father's smile, at the patent in his hands. She'd erased him from the memorial plaque, removed his name from the company history, tried to bury 3 generations of innovation under corporate restructuring language. I couldn't let him disappear, even if it cost me everything else. Even if it cost me 41 years of my life. I couldn't. The workshop door opened. Maya stood there, rain dripping from her coat. April rain now, not snow. The sound on the tin roof was softer, warmer. Dad, you okay? I got up off the floor, put the whiskey bottle on the shelf. Yeah, I'm okay. She looked at the phone, at the photograph, at me. Understood, without asking. Hearing set, she said. April 8th, Judge Hastings. Hank pulled strings. That's 10 days. I know, we need to move fast. She set her laptop on the workbench. I've got 12 farmers who will testify. They're willing to go on record that you designed the modifications they're still using, that Patricia never touched a piece of equipment in her life. She'll say they're lying, that they're my friends, covering for me. Which is why we need physical proof, documents, measurements, something that can't be explained away. Maya looked at the photograph, at the patent in my father's hands. Dad, do you still have the original 1907 patent drawings? The actual paper documents? I thought for a moment. Filing cabinet, top drawer, Dad kept everything. I found them wrapped in brown paper. The original patent application from 1967. The drawings were on vellum, the kind they used before computers. Hand-drafted, my father's neat block letters labeling each component, his signature at the bottom, in fountain pen ink that had faded to brown. Maya spread them carefully on the workbench, pulled out the amended versions that Patricia had filed in 2022, set them side by side. Even I could see the difference. The originals were yellowed, brittle at the edges. The 2022 versions were crisp white paper, laser printed. She claimed these were updates to the original patents, Maya said. Corrections, but look at the paper. I picked up Earl's micrometer, the one Jake had given me, turned it in my hands. What are you thinking? Maya asked. Paper thickness. Vintage vellum is different from modern printer paper. Different density, different composition. And I adjusted the micrometer. If we can measure the difference, we can prove the 2020 versions are forgeries. That she created new versions and backdated them? Maya's eyes widened. That's fraud. Actual, prosecutable fraud. I measured the original vellum carefully. The micrometer read .0087 inches. Thick, substantial, the way they made paper in the 1960s. Then I measured the 2022 original. The micrometer read .0039 inches. Modern printer paper. Thin, recent. Truth is in the thousandths, I said quietly. Maya grabbed her phone, started taking photos. The micrometer reading. The 2 documents side by side. The measurement difference that told the story of a lie. This is it, she said. This proves she forged revisions. Created fake originals. Dad, this could sink the whole AgriCorp deal. Outside, the rain had stopped. I could hear water dripping from the barn roof. Slow, steady. The sound of winter melting away. Hank's truck pulled up. He came in shaking water from his coat. Judge Hastings wants to see the evidence before the hearing. Wants to know what he's walking into. And he saw the documents, the micrometer, Maya's photos. What did you find? Paper doesn't lie, I said. Neither does precision. We worked until midnight, organizing documents, preparing witness lists, building a case that was either going to restore my name or destroy what was left of it. But I wasn't afraid anymore, not of the fight, not of losing everything. Because some things you can't put a price on. Some names can't be bought. Some truths are worth measuring down to the thousandth of an inch. My father had taught me that, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me forget it. April 8th. The courtroom smelled like old oak and floor wax. The windows were open, first warm day of spring, and I could hear robins outside. Smell the wet earth where the snow had finally melted away. Judge Bernard Hastings was 73. Gray hair, reading glasses on a chain. The kind of man who'd been on the bench so long he'd seen every trick twice. He settled into his chair and looked at the packed gallery. Half the town had showed up. Lou was there. Rita from the bank. Jim Patterson. Tyler, the security guard, sitting in the back, looking nervous. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table with Donald Sims and two other lawyers I didn't recognize. She wore a navy suit. Her expression was calm, professional, like this was just another board meeting. Maya sat beside me at the defendant's table. Hank was in the front row behind us. Jake Townsend next to him, holding the box with Earl's tools. Mr. Sterling, Judge Hastings said, I've reviewed your emergency injunction request. You claim the 2019 corporate restructuring was obtained through fraud and medical coercion. That's a serious allegation. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Sterling's counsel argues you signed all documents willingly and are now suffering from memory issues that prevent you from recalling your own consent. He looked at me over his glasses. Which is it? Maya stood. Your Honor, if I may, we have medical documentation showing Mr. Sterling was in the ICU during the alleged signing dates. We also have evidence of systematic patent forgery and undisclosed conflicts of interest. Proceed. The next hour was a blur of testimony. 12 farmers, one after another, taking the stand and telling their stories. Frank Morrison. Wade designed the hydraulic modification on my combine in 2008, still using it, never had a problem. Sarah Chen. He fixed my irrigation system for free during the drought. Drew up plans I still reference, never met Mrs. Sterling once in 20 years of doing business with Sterling Egg. Tom Kowalski. Wade's father helped my grandfather in the 70s. Wade helped me in the 90s. That's 3 generations of Sterling innovation. Can't fake that. Sims cross-examined each one. Suggested they were biased. Friends protecting a friend. But the farmers didn't budge. Their testimony was simple, direct, true. Then Maya called me to the stand. Mr. Sterling, do you recall signing corporate restructuring documents in February 2019? No, ma'am. Do you recall being hospitalized that month? Yes. Pneumonia. I couldn't breathe. They had me sedated. She presented the medical records, the chart notes, the sedation logs. Judge Hastings read them carefully, frowning. Your Honor, Maya said, my father's oxygen saturation was at 79% on February 14th. He was confused, agitated, on sedative medication. He could not legally consent to anything that day. Yet these documents bear his signature. She laid out the corporate restructuring agreement, the patent reassignments, all dated February 14th and 16th. Sterling brought these documents to the hospital, I said. Told me they were insurance forms. I signed them because I was drowning in my own lungs and I trusted my wife. Patricia's expression didn't change, but Sims shifted in his seat. Judge Hastings leaned forward. Mrs. Sterling, did you present business documents to your husband while he was in the ICU? Patricia stood. Your Honor, he was lucid when he signed. He understood what he was signing. According to these medical records, his attending physician documented altered mental status secondary to hypoxia. That's medical terminology for confusion due to oxygen deprivation. The judge set down the papers. Continue, Ms. Sterlington. Maya pulled out the patent documents, the originals from 1907 and the amended versions from 2022. Your Honor, Mrs. Sterling filed amended patent applications in 2022, claiming they were corrections to originals from 1967. But we have the actual 1967 documents here. She set them side by side. The paper is different. Jake brought forward the micrometer, set it on the evidence table. Maya measured both documents in front of the court, called out the readings. 0.087 inches for the 1967 vellum, 0.039 inches for the 2022 forgery. Objection, Sims said. Calling it a forgery assumes facts, not an evidence. Sustained, Judge Hastings said. But he was looking at the measurements. Though I will note that vintage vellum and modern printer paper are demonstrably different thicknesses. The courtroom door opened. A man in a suit rushed in, whispered something to one of Patricia's other lawyers. The lawyer's face went pale. Your Honor, Maya said. There's one more thing. These security logs Mrs. Sterling's counsel submitted. They document Mr. Sterling's unauthorized entry attempts, but look at the dates. They start on November 27th, right after Thanksgiving, the same week that new family exclusion policy went into effect. And she pulled out the memo I'd found in the John Deere logbook, held it up. This memo from Marcus Vanguard dated January 2019. Refers to Phase 3 removing W. Sterling from all patent records. Your Honor, that security guard's instructions, she pointed at Tyler in the back, to document my father's visits weren't about security. They were about building a legal case. That transition the guard mentioned, that was Mrs. Sterling systematically locking my father out before he could discover the patent reassignments. Judge Hastings removed his reading glasses, looked at Tyler. Young man, stand up. Tyler stood, looking terrified. Did someone instruct you to document Mr. Sterling's visits to the building? Yes, sir. Mrs. Sterling. She said to log every time he tried to enter. Said it was for legal purposes. Legal purposes for what? She said, in case we needed to prove he was trespassing, that he didn't work there anymore. The judge's jaw tightened. Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her face went white. Sim's phone buzzed, then the other lawyer's phones. Maya's phone buzzed too. She looked at the screen. Her eyes widened. Your Honor, I'm receiving a press release from AgriCorp Industries. She read from her phone. AgriCorp Industries announces withdrawal from proposed acquisition of Sterling Agricultural Solutions, citing insurmountable intellectual property ownership questions and reputational liability concerns. The courtroom erupted. Whispers became conversations, became shouts. Judge Hastings banged his gavel. Order! Patricia stood. Your Honor, I need a recess. I need to contact... Her phone rang, loud. She'd forgotten to silence it. The caller ID was visible on the screen she'd set on the table. Marcus Vanguard. She grabbed for it. Hit speaker by accident. Vanguard's voice filled the courtroom. Patricia, our legal team says the ownership documentation is clouded beyond repair. The medical coercion angle, the forged patents, the undisclosed consulting relationship. It's a litigation nightmare. We're out. I'm sorry, but AgriCorp doesn't buy companies with this level of exposure. You're on your own. The line went dead. Silence in the courtroom. Everyone had heard. Patricia slowly sat down. Her hands were shaking. Judge Hastings set down his gavel carefully, looked at Patricia, at Sims, at me. In 44 years on this bench, he said quietly, I have seen many ways people betray trust. Many ways people use the law as a weapon. Many ways people destroy what others built. He paused. This might be the coldest. He picked up his pen, started writing. The 2019 corporate restructuring is hereby declared invalid due to lack of informed consent. The original 1983 partnership agreement stands. Sterling Agricultural Solutions is to be divided equally between Wade Sterling and Patricia Sterling, or sold with proceeds split equally. Mrs. Sterling's sole ownership claims are denied. Patricia's face was stone, but her hands kept shaking. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am referring this matter to the county prosecutor for investigation of potential fraud charges related to the patent forgeries. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. The mediation took 3 days. A windowless conference room in the county building. Patricia's lawyers on one side, Maya and I on the other. A professional mediator named Ellen Marsh, trying to find middle ground between two people who'd shared 41 years and now couldn't look at each other. Patricia kept the corporate brand, the building, the client contracts, everything she'd built on the business side. I got the patents back. All of them. My father's name restored on every document. I got the original workshop. And I got the 40 acres that Sterling Agricultural had been planning to pave over for a parking lot expansion. The land where my grandfather had planted his first wheat in 1952. Patricia signed the papers without speaking. Her hand was steady. Mine shook a little, but I got my name down. We stood. The mediator thanked us for our cooperation. Patricia picked up her briefcase. At the door, she stopped, looked back at me. I did love you, she said quietly. Once. I know, I said, but you loved the idea of success more. She left. I never saw her again. April 15th, tax day, the last day to file a spring planning permit. I walked into the county clerk's office at 8 in the morning. The form was already filled out. Sterling Equipment Solutions, LLC, Wade Sterling, owner, 40 acres, spring wheat. A Hank was behind the counter. He didn't say anything, just stamped the permit with more force than necessary. The thunk echoed in the quiet office. Welcome back, he said. The soil was warm under my hands. 70 degrees today, the kind of April afternoon that made you believe in renewal. The smell of turned earth was thick, rich, loamy, alive. The 1904 John Deere rumbled behind me, Jake at the wheel, learning how to keep the furrows straight. Maya walked beside me with a bucket of seed wheat. Her phone kept buzzing with work calls from Omaha, but she'd turned off the ringer, said she'd call them back later. "You're really moving here?" I asked, looking at the Morrison property. 2 bedrooms, needs work, but it's got good land. She scattered seeds along the furrow. Figure I can practice agricultural law from anywhere. Might as well be somewhere that matters. Jake brought the John Deere around for another pass. The diesel smell mixed with the earth smell. Above us, a meadowlark sang from the fence post. The first one I'd heard this year. Spring, real spring. Not just the calendar saying so, but the land saying so. We worked until the sun started dropping toward the tree line. 40 acres planted. Not much compared to the corporate farms around us. But it was mine. Ours. In the workshop, I hung my father's patent on the wall. The original 1967 document in a weatherproof frame, his handwriting, his signature, his name that would never be erased again. Beside it, I hung the new LLC paperwork, Sterling Equipment Solutions. And next to that, the county permit with my name freshly stamped. 3 generations, all visible, all documented, all true. Jake was cleaning the John Deere's air filter, taking his time, doing it right. Maya was at the workbench with her laptop, reviewing a contract for a client. The workshop smelled like motor oil and fresh coffee and the particular scent of a place where real work happened. My phone buzzed. Lou from the diner, text message. "Coffee's on me tomorrow. Sorry I was a coward." Then Jim from the hardware store, "Heard what happened in court. Your dad would be proud." Then 12 messages from farmers, all variations of the same thing. "Good man, well done, welcome back." I didn't respond to any of them. Just set the phone down and picked up Earl's micrometer. Felt its weight, its precision, its truth. Outside, the sun touched the horizon. Golden light spilled across the 40 acres. The wheat wouldn't be up for another 2 weeks, but I could already see it in my mind. Green shoots, spring growth, something new built on something old. Patricia had kept the building. Sold it 6 months later at a loss after the clients left. Last I heard, it was being converted into a data center. No plaques, no history. Just servers and cooling systems. She'd wanted to be remembered for building something. She would be. Just not the way she'd planned. I handed the micrometer to Jake. "Your turn now. You measure the truth. You keep the record." He took it carefully, understood what it meant. Maya closed her laptop. "Spring wheat. When did we harvest?" "July, if the weather holds." "I'll be here." Outside, the meadowlark sang again. The sound carried across the 40 acres. Across the land that remembered who loved it and who tried to sell it. The land that would grow wheat come July. Sterling wheat. On sterling land with sterling hands. Some victories don't sound like gavels falling. They sound like seeds going into warm soil. 6 months later, I was back in the workshop on a Saturday morning, October. The kind of day where the air smells like apples and diesel and the sun comes in low through the windows. The first wheat harvest had come in at 42 bushels per acre. Not spectacular, but honest. We'd sold it to a local mill, made enough to cover costs and then some. Maya had already filed the planting permit for winter wheat. She was at the workbench now, showing Jake how to read a land survey. Her hand rested on her stomach, barely showing yet, but there, 3 months along. She'd told me last week over coffee, nervous. Like she thought I might be disappointed she wasn't married. I just hugged her, told her sterling blood runs stubborn, finds a way to keep going. The workshop was full most days now. Farmers bringing equipment for modifications, for repairs, for the kind of work that took precision and patience. Word had gotten around. The Sterling name meant something again, not because of a brass plaque, but because of what we actually did with our hands. Patricia had remarried, some executive from a competing firm, moved to Kansas City, ran the corporate side of Sterling Agricultural into the ground within 8 months, lost the key accounts, couldn't maintain the equipment contracts without anyone who understood how the machines actually worked. She'd sold the company to a liquidator for 30 cents on the dollar. I didn't take pleasure in that, just noted it. Some people build, some people manage. She'd been good at managing, just forgot that management only works when there's something real underneath to manage. Jake was bent over the survey map, measuring angles with Earl's old transit. The brass caught the morning light. He'd gotten good at this, the precision, the patience, the understanding that truth lives in the measurements. "Mr. Sterling," he said, looking up, "Maya says her baby might be a girl. You gonna teach her this stuff too? If she wants to learn it. What if she doesn't?" I thought about that, looked at my father's patent on the wall, at the tools that had passed through 3 generations, at the 40 acres visible through the workshop door, stubble from the harvest waiting for winter wheat. Then we teach her something else that matters. How to measure truth in whatever she does. How to keep records. How to help people solve real problems. I set down the wrench I'd been holding, Legacy isn't what you build, Jake. It's who you teach to build after you're gone. He nodded slowly. Went back to the survey. Outside, I heard a meadowlark calling. Late in the season for them, but there it was. The sound carried across the 40 acres, across land that 3 generations of Sterlings had worked. Maya came over, put her hand on my shoulder. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The October sun warmed the workshop floor. The tools hung in their chalk outlines on the pegboard. The micrometer sat on the bench, ready for the next measurement. The land waited for winter wheat, patient, honest, remembering. Patricia had gotten the building. I'd gotten the legacy. Not a bad trade. Some victories don't sound like applause or gavels or corporate acquisition announcements. They sound like wheat growing, like tools being used, like the quiet passage of knowledge from one hand to another on a Saturday morning when the light comes in, just right, and you realize everything you needed was always here, written in soil and steel and the truth you can hold in your hands. My father used to say the best measurement is the one you can repeat, the one that stays true no matter who checks it. Turns out he was talking about more than hydraulics. He was talking about a life.